In 2016, Donald Trump obviously launched a political revolution, or whatever you want to call it, that was very good. It was very positive for this country. It is exactly what the conservative movement needed. But as we know, in many ways, the conservative establishment tried very desperately to stop it. So if you remember back to 2016, all the major institutions of the kind of conservative GOP apparatus obviously worked very hard against Trump. But eventually, all these institutions basically came to notice that this is just not worth it. Like, they realized how popular Trump was. Many of these Republicans realized and stuff that, you know what, we're just going to have to suck it up. We're just going to have to pretend to like Trump, in order to kind of survive basically and stay in power. And so, what you saw is people obviously like Lindsey Graham and whatnot kind of co-opt Trump, kind of try to get along with Trump, and the conservative establishment basically try to infiltrate the Trump presidency as a vehicle to get what they want. But now, obviously, that you see that Trump is no longer president and, he's still the leader of the party, but he's not really, obviously, the center of politics necessarily at the moment because he's not the president. You obviously see, like, a lot of the kind of conservative establishment, the conservative mainstream, behind the scenes, very hard, is trying to break away. And so while someone like Charles Cook, who is like a senior editor, I believe, senior writer at the National Review, while someone like Charles Cook is very bold for going out and saying this, I want to highlight before we get into it that this is exactly how most of the Republican establishment feels. This article right here. This article tells you a lot about how people like Mitch McConnell, Lindsey Graham, Kevin McCarthy, Tim Scott, all of those establishment Republicans who didn't like Trump, never liked Trump all along, but kind of like got along board with him, just for the clout, just for the grift or whatever, just to, stay alive, basically, politically. It's very important to point out that this article right here is going to tell you a lot about how they feel. So that's number one. And the second thing I wanted to point out is that this guy right here, Charles Cook, you've seen a lot of anti-Trump Republican projects, right? The Lincoln Project, that guy Joe Walsh who ran for president, people like him. And these things have been very obvious, like Democrat grifts, right? Like, these people literally just shill for generic liberal CNN talking points on everything, right? And this whole argument that you've seen in many cases from the media of the anti-Trump Republican, it's so obviously fake, right? It's like the Lincoln Project. Like, does anyone really believe those are anti-Trump Republicans or people defending the Republican Party doing it? No, they're obviously like liberal hacks. They're liberal operatives, basically just using that title for whatever. But that's what I want to point out, is that Charles Cook is not exactly that, right? Like, I don't really trust the guy. I think the guy's very establishment, whatever, but he's not like Lincoln Project. Like, he is like, I would say, genuinely, in many ways, a Republican. Probably not a conservative, authentically at least, but he is like an actual Republican, like somewhat of a more serious figure than just a pure grift. Like, when Charles says this, I don't think he's just grifting. I think this is he genuinely does have influence within National Review, within conservative circles, and this is genuinely where he's trying to push the party. So we're going to read this article in a bit. So, what I will say actually before we start into this is, I guess I'll just give my take on the whole Trump 2024 thing, which is, obviously Trump is not perfect, but I think we understand, as kind of America firsters, national conservatives, national populists, whatever, that he still has to be the guy, right? At the moment, there's obviously no one better. And I think there's something to be said about the fact that we could see a very effective kind of Trump revenge tour in 2024, right? Which is to say that I think here's the problem, is that sometimes with Trump, we get too caught up on his specific messaging or whatever. Or he's like, he's not really going after globalism the way we want or whatever. And those are all valid criticisms. But I think it's important to understand what we want most from Trump is not for him to be much of an ideologue, right? Like, Trump doesn't have to read every single page of Death of the West or, Reflections on Revolution in France or whatever. I don't think that's what any of us expect from Trump. More so, what Trump has to do is just simply be a force for vengeance against the conservative and obviously liberal establishment in D.C. in 2024 and as his second term in of his presidency, right? We hope by the end of that term, he has truly gone after, not tried to make allies with the Republican establishment, because now he's literally watched as they all screwed him over. They all abandoned him, right? I think our hope really for Trump has to be that he's going to really take power and he's going to be angry. He's going to be vindictive with it. And that is sort of the story of Trump's presidency, is it not? Is he's Trump's career, I should say, right? He always remembers who wronged him. He always gets them back. And I think there's something to be said in politics, at least, about how that could be effective and how we need that. We need Trump to be that. But that's kind of been my take on it. I think he, to me, there's nobody better. I think that he will be. I think the second term of Trump will be very good. You know, it won't be like the perfect restoration of America. He's not going to become Caesar overnight, but it's like I think that's what we're going to see, right? And I think in many ways the reason why you have people like this saying no to Trump in 2024 is because very secretly that's what they fear, right? Like first term Trump, you know, I think they don't like it a bunch, but they'll kind of take it, they'll accept it. He'll cut taxes, he'll, you know, close up immigration a little bit, but you know, he'll just have a decent presidency. But I think what a lot of these people, like for instance, over the National Review, really fear is that second term Trump is going to remember people like Charles Cook, but obviously not just Charles Cook. He's going to remember Lindsey Graham, Kevin McCarthy, all of the Republican, you know, establishment that screwed him over, that co-opted him. I think that's their real fear. You know, it's not that they're scared of losing the election or whatever. No. I think it's more so that they are extremely fearful that Trump in 2024 could, not necessarily will, but he definitely has the potential to really be kind of a counter-revolutionary force in politics that like really will screw all these people out of power, damage their legacies, or really genuinely drain the swamp. Not saying that's going to happen, but that's the best case scenario, right? And I think that's what they really fear, and I think that's what we want from Trump. And, you know, I think it's very important to understand that people like Ron DeSantis or Glenn Youngkin or whoever else they're trying to run, they're just not going to be this, you know? And I think in many ways, you put those people into office, they're just going to be very generic, kind of normal B minus C plus Republicans. And that's obviously not what we need. You know, we're in a point in our country where it's far too dire and, you know, we don't have the time left to deal with, you know, not an unserious, but, you know, like presidents that won't like use the full force of the government and really do what we need to be done. Okay. So that's the take. I gave it rather concisely. I mean, we've talked about this before, but let's get into this article because this is quite interesting stuff. Okay. So the article obviously is titled No to Trump in 2024 from the National Review. So the GOP does not lack for better options. So why should we put ourselves through all that again? And it's like, what is that? Yeah, what is that exactly? What do they mean by that? And so, again, consider we're talking about the National Review here, right? This is a conservative newspaper who's been around since like the 1960s, okay? And I think that's something important to understand. Not that all things that are old are bad, because that's obviously a very non-conservative thing to say. But, you know, I think it's definitely true that basically most conservative institutions that have been around since before the Tea Party, you know, the kind of social circumstances they were founded off of, you know, in many cases, they're not exactly on our side. But it's like, what exactly does that mean? Oh, that he's actually going to challenge the political establishment, that he's actually going to, you know, say, hey, what's going on with the immigration crisis? That he's going to stand up to corporate America, to the kind of dying plight of the white working class in the Middle West, in the Midwest and things like that. Like, what does that mean? You know, what do you mean? Oh, through all that again? No, yeah, what they really want is, you know, I don't know, Mitt Romney 2012 again, but whatever. All right. So anyways, Donald Trump hasn't said for sure whether he will run in 2024, reports NPR, but he's having a hell of a lot of fun teasing it. Donald Trump in 2024, why on earth would conservatives choose that guy? And it's like, I'm serious. Why? Why would we do that when we have a choice? The idea should be absurd, risible, pharisaical. I don't even know what that means. I don't even know what this word means. But, you know, to be honest, this is a perfect representation, not to go full scale, you know, stand with, you know, anti-elite sentiment or whatever, which I do stand with, but not, you know, okay, whatever. Just scratch what I just said. Okay. This absolutely does represent the kind of disconnect between the conservative establishment and the conservative base. What does this word even mean? Okay, I don't know. Maybe I'm dumb. Maybe I'm really just that much of an idiot. But there is something to be said. You know, I think the fact that he doesn't understand why conservatives want Trump in 2024, you know, I think there's something to be said about how out of touch clearly this guy is, you know, when this is his attitude towards it. Why? This is not all my academic French accent word stuff enough. There's something to be said there. But anyways, it should be a punchline, a mania, the preserve of the demented fringe. Okay. And again, this is, like, that's how they view you, you know. Trump supporter, MAGA hat voter, the conservative establishment sees you as the demented fringe, right? So Very telling, very telling. Politics matters. You know, how condescending is this? Politics matters. And because politics matters, it is a bad idea to allow politics to be held hostage by someone who is, in his heart of hearts, doesn't really care. Donald Trump is an extraordinary selfish man, and he is only too happy to subordinate your interest to his own. Really? Donald Trump is a selfish man. Like, this is exactly what people voted against in 2016. I want people to understand this. You know, I don't know. He probably sees 2016 as being, I don't know. They just voted. It is what it is. It's what happened. But really, they were just wanted someone who would stick up to the radical left. And it's like, no. You know what they voted against in 2016? You know what the Republican primary voter and in many ways the general election voter was voting against in 2016? It wasn't, you know, yeah, to an extent, it was the left and the Democrats, obviously, but also to a strong extent, it was people like you. It was condescending, elitist, you know, academic heads that talk exactly like you. But, you know, the great irony of this, right? Donald Trump is an extraordinarily selfish man, you know, coming from the conservative establishment who has completely sold out, and the political establishment in general, who has completely sold out our country for the past 40 to 50 years, right? It's like the great irony of is calling someone like Trump, who, you know, I really in his heart, yes, does he have an ego? Of course he has an ego. I think, you know, and I think the reality of the situation is many great world leaders do have an ego, but I don't believe Donald Trump is a selfish man at all. Like, I genuinely believe in many ways he is like an honest patriot who cares about his country, who cares about people. And for many reasons, that's why he sacrificed so much to run for politics and to run for office, right? But the great irony of it is that, you know, the Republican Party of the last few decades has, you know, the Republican politicians have been extremely selfish. I mean, these are the people who have imported an entirely new working base because, you know, it was cheaper labor or whatever, while the Democrats get their cultural goals accomplished. But do that, outsource labor across the world, turn a totally blind eye to, you know, the opioid crisis, to the degenerating American culture. They don't care about your family. They don't care about your God. They don't care about anything, right? And all of a sudden now, like, the person who comes along and kind of taps into those sentiments and, you know, speaks like one of you and obviously relates to you in many ways. The framing is that Donald Trump is an extraordinarily selfish man. You know, it's just not true. And I don't even say that to like shill excessively for Trump. I just think it's the truth. I don't see Donald Trump as selfish at all. You know, I think in many ways, yes, does he have his own personal vendetta against the political establishment in 2024? Sure. But I think genuinely the reason he's involved in politics is because he is this businessman. He's just like this character, but he watched his country go off a cliff, and he's been talking about it for many decades. And I think, you know, in many ways, he is an extremely selfless man. And I think that's the truth. But anyways, why let him? Why let him? Again, I think the reason why they're like, why let him do this is, what do they mean by that? No, what they mean by that is what they fear. Why let him destroy our political system? Why let him destroy the political establishment as it currently exists? And it's like, the question really should be, why not do that? Why shouldn't we let him do that? But anyways, why let him? It is one thing to say, well, he may have been a fickle bore, but I like some of what he did once he was in office. Okay. So again, so point this out. Very interesting to understand. This sentence couldn't be more obvious. They like some of what he did when he was in office, which means tax cuts, which means all the things that Lindsey Graham wanted to do, which means the Mitch McConnell appointed judges who, you know, have totally been terrible on everything. But they don't like the fact that he was a fickle bore, you know, the fact that he, you know, called out the political establishment, the fact that he was a firebrand, the fact that he related to, you know, regular people in many ways, right? No, we don't like that, but we kind of like all the generic Republican policy he did when he's in office. It's like telling. These people are pretentious. Like, I actually can't stand these people in many ways. But anyways, it's quite another to put yourself through 4 more years of the man when you don't have to. Can you like imagine just the person writing this? Like, I don't know much about Charles Cook. I do know that this article was extremely elitist. It's extremely condescending. You can taste that. He's probably an Ivy League graduate. He probably scoffs and sneers at actual Republican voters or whatever. You know, he just wants to sit high atop his manor in the Northeast or whatever and talk about tax cuts and the Heritage Foundation and economic policy. And Trump is like, no, shut up. He's taking power in 2024. There's nothing you can do about it. And, he's going to drain the swamp. He's going to ruin all these people's careers. And I will rejoice. We will all rejoice when that happens. But anyways, whatever justification there may have been for picking the lesser of two evils in the 2016 or 2020 general election, a justification that was a great deal stronger before Trump. We're not gonna talk about that on YouTube, but it cannot obtain in 2022. Okay, now don't tell me because I'm responding to Trump's repeated hints, I must be obsessed or deranged or jealous. But you are obsessed or deranged or jealous, and I think the reason why you're all of those things is because, again, I think that in many ways, Donald Trump is actually a threat. I think they understand this. In 2020, you know why you didn't see a lot of this from the Republican and conservative establishment? Because I think in many ways towards the second few years of Trump's presidency, and I guess Trump's presidency in general, they actually ended up getting a lot of what they wanted, right? You had these people infiltrate Trump's White House, just push their ideas, push their policy to get done. The Republican establishment was getting along with Trump, and that's what it was. And so I think that's why, you saw this stuff in 2016. You didn't see a lot in 2020, but now in 2024, you're starting to see this again. And I think that's exactly the reason why. They're obsessed because they understand that now that this guy's out of office, now that they understand this guy's kind of angry, he could be a very real threat to their power, whereas he wasn't once. They figured out how to control him the first time after, him being kind of backstabbed or whatever by the GOP, and now they're kind of trying to come back into the fold. I think that now they understand it's going to be a lot harder for him to control him. Deranged, I mean, you're not, I don't know if they're deranged, they just suck. Okay, they just suck. The conservative establishment just sucks. Or jealous. Yes, you are jealous. You're jealous because if Trump is everything that Trump supporters want him to be, he will literally just upend the entire conservative establishment by the end of his next 4 years. Okay. So they are jealous. Because they want to, obviously maintain control. Or perhaps I want Joe Biden to be president. Well, no, actually, I don't. Okay, well, and like I said, this is why I wanted to respond to this, because this is different from the Lincoln Project, right? This isn't a guy who is just a grifter necessarily for the Democrats just saying, oh, I'm trying to get, other Republican voters to not vote for Trump. No, this is more so that, like, this is the conservative establishment, like the real conservative establishment, not just like Lincoln Project grifters. This is the real conservative establishment talking. So it should be very noted that, this is who's speaking here. But regardless, Biden is not going to be on the ballot in the next Republican presidential primaries, is he? General elections can be complicated because they require the public to decide whether it wants the Republican or the Democrat, both of whom have already been nominated by their respective parties. But primaries are different. In the next Republican primary, the question will be, given a free choice, who do you want to run against Joe Biden? My answer will be a Republican who is likely to win and who, if he wins, will not be an insane mess. Is that not yours? What do you mean? Again, what do they mean by this, right? This is just so condescending. Okay, this is an insane mess. When Trump got into power and he was actually calling out, the powers that be, what an insane mess that was. When he was saying, we're gonna cut legal immigration by, what an insane mess he is. It's like, no, do you not understand that that's the insane mess that you see? What we see is someone actually standing up to the uniparty, right? Standing up to the system that has failed. The system has failed. But it's very interesting because you read this and it's like you can just tell how out of touch this guy is. Like this guy just doesn't get it. I mean, he has no like semblance of he genuinely doesn't understand why the average Trump voter likes Trump so much. And that tells you a lot. But anyways. Oh, maybe he does. Okay, here we go. And please don't tell me that the GOP should choose Trump again because he fights. Okay. The Republican Party now has a whole host of other candidates who fight, and none of them come without Trump's baggage, his torpidness. What is that? His torpidness, his ill discipline, his self-indulgence, his abject regard for our constitutional order, or his pathological, unyielding, surrealistic dishonesty. No, what that means is we don't have other Republican candidates who fight, okay? Like, yeah, Ron DeSantis is something of a fighter, but it should also be pointed out that here in Florida, you have Chris Sprowls and the Speaker of the House and the Senate Majority Leader in the state Senate. They're terrible. I mean, they're basically Democrats, absolute rhinos. They won't get constitutional carry done. They've watered down everything DeSantis has tried to do. They're trying to pass this, insane, ridiculous congressional map that's just terrible. And DeSantis wants the opposite of these things. And it should be noted that, DeSantis is trying to play diplomacy with them. Okay. And that's not to say I don't like DeSantis. I think I've talked about what purpose I think DeSantis holds in the party, but I think it's very important to understand that it's actually not true that these other Republicans we have are the ones who fight. Ron DeSantis is a great governor, but he's not the fighter that Trump is going to be. And honestly, I don't think he's enough of a fighter to, end up as the president or end up in federal politics. And it's like the few Republicans that we do have that are fighters, I think that in many ways, this guy would scoff at the idea of them, running for president too. It's like, so what if we said, oh, well, you want a fighter? Okay, let's run Paul Gosar or something. This guy would be like, no, no, Paul Gosar is crazy too. You know what I mean? It's like the other Republicans we have that actually are fighters on the level of Trump. It should be noted, no, he would not support any of these guys. He would not support Gosar. He wouldn't even support someone like Gates or Marjorie Taylor Greene or whoever it is. It's not that, okay? Just because Ron DeSantis has a few cool video bites doesn't mean that he will be the fighter that Trump is, And when this guy says Trump's baggage, his torpediness, ill discipline, all these big words or whatever, what that means is that, again, the other Republicans that you're thinking of aren't actually fighters. They're not, they're not. Imagine if we had, okay, let's say Anthony Sabatini. Okay, we love Anthony Sabatini. Okay, but if we said, okay, our younger replacement's going to be Anthony Sabatini, this guy would be like, no, Anthony Sabatini has baggage, torpediness, ill discipline. No. What it really is that the people he considers to be fighters are not fighters. Okay, or at least to the extent that Trump is. DeSantis is great. Youngkin is okay or whatever, but these people are not the fighters that that you're going to get from them. But okay, what, pray tell, did Donald Trump say as president that Ron DeSantis wouldn't have? Is it not obvious? DeSantis, let's be realistic about this. We talk about how Trump always surrounded himself with the wrong people or whatever, right? And in many ways that's true, but in many ways it should also be pointed out by when we say that Trump surrounded himself with the wrong people, it should be pointed out those wrong people are basically just generic Republican, cabinet members. You never notice that's who we really got mad at. And so that's to say, we all deep down know that if DeSantis got into office, who are his advisors going to be? Who's he going to appoint to all of the cabinet positions or whatever? Are they going to be the outsiders? No, because really only Trump is the only guy who would genuinely appoint outsiders to any of these things currently in the party. If DeSantis got into office, he might be okay in terms of policy. I don't think he'd be, amazing. He'd be a decent president, but all the people he put into office, Secretary of State, all these cabinet positions would just be the generic Republican establishment people. That's very obvious. We all know this to be true. I mean, look at who he kind of surrounds himself with now. And it's yeah, he's been good in terms of policy here in Florida, but I think it's just very obvious if he gets into power, he's just going to, select all the people he knew from his congressional career and all the people around the RNC and whatnot. And so, that's number one. I think many ways, number two, DeSantis is doing a great job as governor right now. I am not convinced that as president, he would, take power and just go crazy and just, be the great national conservative we want him to be. I think he would just be kind of another generic Republican in many ways. And I think people who can't see that, it's a little bit sus, but, again, good governor, but I don't see any evidence that DeSantis would exceed Trump in any way in terms of policy as president. He really wouldn't. But what law did he sign that Greg Abbott would have vetoed? Again, here's the thing, though. Presidents set the legislative agenda. That's what's important to understand. Presidents set the legislative agenda. Ultimately, most of the laws that get passed through the federal government, just the same way in at the governorship level, right? Most of the stuff that gets passed is things that are proposed and that are requested by the president. Okay, so yes, I guess theoretically, if Ron DeSantis and Greg Abbott were in the Senate, in many ways they probably would not be vetoing a lot of the things that Trump wants to do. But it should be pointed out, right, that I don't think the legislative agenda for the upcoming year that President Ron DeSantis or President Greg Abbott would set would look anything like the ideal Trump presidency that we want him to be. Okay, so I think that's very important to point out. which of the judicial Tim Scott, Kim Reynolds, are you free? Oh, these are the people. Okay, anyways, which of the judicial picks that the Federalist Society prepared for him? Do you not understand that's part of the problem? Okay, we don't like the judicial picks that the Federalist Society prepared for him. Like, do you not understand that? You know, and it's not just for no reason. I mean, look what happened when it comes to election integrity, COPE mandates or whatever, all that stuff. Yeah, his judges have been terrible. Okay. And so do you think you're owning the Trump conservatives by saying, well, Tim Scott, Marco Rubio, and Kim Reynolds would have wanted those judges too? Yeah, that's exactly the problem. The difference is that our hope is that Trump will learn from those lessons. And Tim Scott, Marco Rubio, and Kim Reynolds, they wanted those people. Like, it's not for them. It's not, oh, I made a mistake, I'm going to learn my lesson in next time. It's like, no, that's exactly what these people want. Okay. So anyways, Trump's apologists tend to cast him as an unfortunate package deal. You want the policy, you get the lunacy too. No, actually, the lunacy is based. The lunacy is epic, okay? Because we as actual conservatives are very tired of you academic heads. And by the way, I don't think it's just that you think you're big-brained or philosophical or whatever. In many ways, it's simply that the Republican establishment is bought out by corporate interests, right? In many ways, they act as controlled opposition to the left. And they frame it in terms of small government, all these things. It's just not true. But no, we like the lunacy, actually. The lunacy is the lunacy, quote unquote. That's exactly what our broken political system needs. Okay. That is what Trump is. He's a wake-up call to the political system. And in many ways, you know what? I'm sick of saying he's a wake-up call to the political system, because that was a 2016 talking point. He's no longer just a wake-up call to the system. He is the wrecking ball that's going to destroy the system, okay? That's going to destroy down, this wicked, godless, post-liberal, transnational political system. Like, no, it's all coming down, okay? And that's part of the problem. Ron DeSantis, great governor, doesn't have what it takes to bring down the system. And that's what we want. That's what we want from Trump, bring down the Democratic Party, bring down the Republican Party, bring down all of the permanent swamp apparatus in DC. Like, it all needs to come down. Okay. So I want the policy. I guess to an extent, I would argue I more so want the lunacy, quote unquote, than the policy, because like I said, I don't want Trump to be the biggest ideologue in 2024. That's not what I'm looking for. That's not what I think I expect from Trump. He's no Pat Buchanan. What I hope he is just basically someone who is extremely vindictive against the political system, wants his revenge, and as a result will, by proxy, basically act as the bowling ball that destroys everything that we want to see destroyed. Okay. That's what I really want to see. Okay. But that isn't true anymore. If it ever was. Okay. But see, Marco Rubio and Tim Scott are going to do tax cuts. Therefore, why don't you want them? How out of touch can you be, dude? I guess, a lot of people do read the National Review, a lot of conservatives, but does this guy not understand how Trump voters really think or why they support Trump? Like, all of the things that you're saying, this is not how actual Trump voters talk. This is how, certain conservative figures who weren't really on board with Trump, this is how they talk. Okay. You probably know certain commentators out there that talk like this, but this whole, you want the policy, you get the lunacy too. That's not how most Republican voters talk. Most Trump voters actually like Trump's personality. That's why they support him. Okay. It's not like we don't see it as a negative. We see it as a positive. Okay. But anyways, Control-Alt-Delete sends me £2. Shout out to our Brits. Shout out to Britain. He says, leftism is left-handed Satanism. It makes sense. Hey, if the shoe fits, it's very true. It's very true. I think in many ways, liberalism and leftism basically is Satanism in a lot of ways. But Control-Alt-Delete also sends another £2. He says, Dark MAGA. It's so true. It's so true. Dark MAGA is coming. It's literally imminent. Sam Madsen sent me $5. Let me just go through super chats real quick. Sam Madsen sent me $5. He says, these people want to give up all of Trump's gains just so they can get back 22 Bush Biden voters in Orange County. I don't even think it's about that, as if they're going to get them back realistically. No, like I said, I think even more so, it's not even about electability. It's more so, like I said, I think that they understand that Trump he may very well be a very real threat to them in 2024, right? Because like I said, they they understand Trump's psychology, and I think they kind of understand that they did screw over Trump. They were hoping that'd be the last they'd see of Trump, and Trump would just retire, and it didn't work. Right now, Trump is talking about. See, they probably secretly were thinking, yeah, Biden won't support the same tax policy as us, but in many ways, it's a good thing. Trump is out of power now. We don't have to deal with him. We never have to hear from him again, because a lot of people just assume, well, Trump's going to retire. He's going to be too old. And then Trump is like, I'm going to run again, right? I'm coming back. And what you've basically seen is they're fearful because now they understand. They understand that they screwed over Trump. They know that Trump's not happy with them. And so they understand that whereas Trump kind of made a truce with them the first term, I think they understand the second term. There's a very real possibility that Trump will just be a wrecking ball against them. You know, he really is going after revenge this time. And that's what they really fear. Like, they're terrified of it, you know? So also important that none of the other candidates have lost an election to Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and then disgracefully lied about it for a year. Yeah. We're not going to get into that. We're not allowed to get into that, but that none of the other candidates have inspired a riot in the service of that lie. Okay, here we go. So you're towing the Jan 6 talking points, liberal establishment Jan 6 talking points, but he's the real conservative here, guys. That none of the other candidates have sat in their country club for the last 2 years issuing unhinged press releases. What are those unhinged press releases, huh? Delivering impotent endorsements. Hey, I kind of agree with that. Probably for different reasons. I don't like Trump's endorsements either, but mainly because they countersignal the Republican mainly because they don't countersignal the Republican establishment enough. But anyways, and attempting to undermine Mitch McConnell, the most effective Republican senator of the last 50 years. Give me a break. This can't even be real. Way to turn off almost every real Trump voter in this country. Way to really turn them off of your case. Attempting to undermine Mitch McConnell, the most effective Republican senator of the last 50 years. Yeah, effective at what? Effective at starting war in Iraq. Effective at killing American manufacturing. Effective at killing Americans with opioids. And like, isn't his wife like connected to a Chinese spy or something? I don't even know. What is Mitch McConnell effective at? Effective at getting in a bunch of justices that got into power and wouldn't even overturn public university vax mandates. Like that's our effective Republican senator. Give me a break. Nobody likes Mitch McConnell, dude. And the fact, your case sucked before. It was condescending before. But the fact that the hill this guy's going to die on is attempting to undermine Mitch McConnell. Like, outside of Washington, D.C., and maybe like very rich parts of Orange County, California, does any real Republican voter buy this argument? Nobody likes Mitch McConnell. Everyone wants to see Mitch McConnell ousted from leadership and more preferably taken out of office. Like, do I have to say more? How more obvious can it be? He's choosing Mitch McConnell over Donald Trump. Now, with that said, like I said, I think it's very important to understand, right, that Mitch McConnell, Lindsey Graham, Tim Scott, all these establishment Republicans, whatever, Kevin McCarthy, right? This is how they feel, right? This is how they feel about Trump. And, you know, in many ways, this Charles Cook guy from the National Review basically is writing on their behalf. That's what I think is the part that I think is important for us to understand. But anyways, yeah, ridiculous. I don't think much more has to be said about it. Do we really have to go into why Mitch McConnell sucks? Okay, I don't think we do. Yes. Some of the criticisms against Donald Trump were unjust, as have been some of the open-ended investigations to his conduct. But Trump is hated by an awful lot of Americans for a good cause, and there's absolutely no reason for those Americans to be asked to sweat their vote again the next time around. The GOP does not lack options. It does not need to return to this well. Again, also, actually, I want to point this out, right? What did they say? They said, well, now the Republican Party has a bunch of fighters, but what we don't want is people who undermine Mitch McConnell. Then they're not fighters, right? If they're not going to undermine Mitch McConnell, then they can't be fighters. And I think this is what you're going to see from the Republican establishment, obviously, is that, you know, they try to prop up people who are like, see, these people fight like Trump. They occasionally tweet like Trump. They occasionally talk like Trump. Sometimes they behave like Trump in press conferences or whatever. So they're just like Trump. And it's like, no, what these are, and he's telling you outright, what these people are basically Mitch McConnell apologists, right? Just pure establishment GOP heads, but who are going to kind of do it in the name of fighting just like Trump. See, we have fighters. We have other fighters. All these other Republicans, they're fighters too. It's just that they won't undermine Mitch McConnell. See what's going on there. And you're going to see this propped up a lot, right? This isn't to say that everyone, you know, like that Ron DeSantis and all these people are totally useless, but I think it's very important to understand there's a reason why they're being propped up. And when it comes to the presidential race, that's what they hope to get out of someone like a Ron DeSantis. They hope that Ron DeSantis has been a good governor. I support his governorship, but they're hoping that as president, DeSantis would be a lot more, controllable, and he'd be a fighter in the sense that he kind of rile up the base, but he wouldn't undermine Mitch McConnell. In other words, he wouldn't actually seriously take a stand against the GOP establishment or anything. He would just kind of nod to Republican voters enough to the extent to which, he's allowed to take power and he's allowed to get their endorsement. You know what I'm saying? You understand? So that's very important to take into account, okay? All right. The United States is an enormous and well-populated country, and it really ought to be able to do better than run a second election between Joe freaking Biden and Donald freaking Trump. Oh, look at him now. He's trying to talk relatable. He's trying to talk like the white working class now. Shut up, dude. No, actually, he just sounds even more elitist, because who says freaking? Who says freaking? Who says freaking and spells it like that? You're just being a cringe boomer. This actually makes you less relatable in many ways. Okay, change, not reruns, ought to be the GOP's theme. Really? Let's hone in on this. Change, not reruns, ought to be the GOP's theme. Donald Trump is change, dude. Do you not get that? Yeah, what all these people you're suggesting are reruns of George Bush, okay? That's what you're getting. You're getting reruns of George Bush and basically all the, crappy Republicans, of Bob Dole, okay? Of Mitt Romney. Like Trump is the change, dude. The reruns are doing the same thing again. The reruns is doing what you did with Mitt Romney and George Bush, which is like, oh, let's take a very popular Republican governor and try to prop him up for president and run him as a total neocon. Like that's the rerun, okay? But we saw the last rerun with Jeb Bush. It doesn't work, okay? We don't want any more of it. But those are the reruns, dude. Trump is the change. Trumpism is the change. Trumpism is the fresh new thing in many ways. Now, I would argue that the core tenets behind Trumpism, even if Trump doesn't entirely understand them, the core tenets, I would argue, are original conservatism, right? It's kind of the original America First movement of the 1940s. And, in many ways, you could, of the 1930s, 1920s, and obviously kind of the Buchananites of the 1990s, like Trump shares a lot of those ideas. But in many ways, it is, yes, a change from the Republican establishment, basically post 1960 or whatever, right? Or post Nixon, I should say. But we are the change, dude. We are the change. Change away from the political leaders who do not do the required reading and can barely string a sentence together. Again, here we go again with the elitism, dude. See, actually, I think this is a good learning point. Because, obviously, if we are trying to, and I tweeted about this a little bit this week, but if we as the populists, quote unquote, as the Neocons, the national conservatives, the whatever, the anti-establishment people, the America First people, I think this is very important to point out. If we are going to run against these people, if we are going to act as the alternative to these people, I think it's very important in 90 to 95% of instances to avoid talking like these people. Do you see how condescending, do you see how elitist this guy sounds and whatnot, right? It is very important to understand the reason why Trump was so popular in 2016 and the reason why Trump, really does resonate with, the Midwestern white working class and kind of these working class demographics or whatever you want to say, to that the forgotten man of America, whatever, right? The reason why Donald Trump resonates with them is because he does not speak like these people, right? He does not speak, he does not act, he did not carry himself like these people, right? The reason I'm bringing this up is because I feel like a lot of the populist candidates, a lot of the kind of candidates you're seeing trying to frame their message based on the 2016 stuff. And, they're good on policy. They're good in ideas. But I think their problem is they forget the key aspect of the fact that, yes, Trump's ideas were popular, but I think it's important to understand that I would argue the real reason Trump won in 2016 and beat out all the other Republicans, yes, he was calling out the establishment. Yes, he had many ideas that were unorthodox for Republicans. I think the real thing that carried him to victory, though, was not his ideas, was not his policy. It more so was his personality. It more so was his image. It was more so of that fighting, energetic spirit, right? And I say this because I think there's a lot of well-intended populist Republican candidates in this cycle who don't understand this, right? They carry Trump's ideas. They really are genuinely in their hearts trying to run off of the 2016 Trump message. but they don't, they present them in a very think tanky, boring academic sounding way. They go on this whole thing about their family tax policy or whatever, and you wonder, like, why are these people struggling in the polls? Why are these kind of generic boomer cons beating them out? And it's like, because these populists don't understand. They're not actually populists in a sense, because they don't understand how to actually talk to our people. They don't understand how to talk to our base. And I think that's very important to understand, which is that if we are going to run as the opposition to people like this, to people like Charles Cook, we cannot sound like Charles Cook. We cannot talk like Charles Cook. We cannot kind of have this academic head, elitist kind of way of talking, even if our ideas are different, because that's just not something that's going to resonate. Trump resonates because of his personality, right? He does not talk like these. Yes, he's an Ivy League graduate and he's a very successful, rich person, sure, but he does not talk like one of them. He talks like one of us. He talks like one of you, right? And I'll just give an example of this, not to single, let's just say JD, let's just pick out JD Vance, because I think JD Vance is a prime example of this, right? And I'm not to single out JD Vance. It's not necessarily just about him, and it's not just about Joe Kent. I think it's a big problem in general that you see from a lot of candidates or whatever, and people are going to think I'm trying to call out just one of those two. And it's really not. It's a general problem I see. But a lot of the candidates who are kind of running off of kind of the 2016-esque ideas, they don't figure out how to talk like 2016. You see, JD Vance is running off of the most solid policy platform of the entire Ohio Senate race. He may end up winning. I don't know. It really is a toss-up. But I think the big problem that he has is, in many ways, he's kind of presenting himself as, yeah, I get it. He is kind of an elite in many ways. Like, he comes from think tanks. He comes from, Yale and whatnot. So he talks like an academic or whatever. But he never, I don't think he really, over the course of his campaign cycle, he tried. I don't think he really ever really like mastered figuring out how to talk to our base, right? Because I think it's very important to understand the Republican establishment. Yeah, I mean, the Republican voter, I should say, in many ways, yeah, sure. A lot of Republican voters do support these policies, like an immigration moratorium, family tax credit, whatever. Like, yeah, I'm sure they support those things, but that's not what's going to drive them to the polls. The real thing that we need to be tapping into as the populace is the fact that the Republican establishment is angry. I keep saying the Republican establishment, sorry. The Republican voters, the average Republican voter, other way around. Republican voters are angry at the Republican establishment, right? They feel lied to, they feel robbed, they feel just totally distanced, and they feel betrayed, right? By the Republican establishment, by the GOP. We win. Our types of candidates win by tapping into that, by tapping into like that Trump MAGA style culture war, right? So, and like I said, I think in many ways, I'm just giving JD Vance as an example. I'm not singling this out, but I think that a lot of these populist candidates that we've seen in the cycle, they're running on anti-establishment policies, you could say, but their rhetoric and their presentation looks a lot like Charles Cook. And it's very important to understand. They wonder why they're struggling in their primaries. That's the reason why. They don't know how to talk to our base. And that's what is very important to understand. If you're going to run on the 2016 message, if you're going to claim to be the true vanguard of 2016, you cannot just run on 2016 ideas. You need the 2016 spirit as well, right? And that's why I think someone like Anthony Sabatini or Mike Crispy, they get this, right? They support all of our ideas. I would argue someone like Anthony Sabatini probably has better policies in many ways than someone like JD Vance or whatever. But so they support all the right policies or whatever. They have the right ideas, but they understand how to talk to Republican voters. They are firebrands. They go after rhinos, right? They throw flames. They throw shots out there. Like they get it, right? They understand the great anger that Republican voters feel towards the establishment. And they understand that ultimately that is what drove Trump to victory in 2016, more so than his family tax policy or whatever. They understand that. And so I know it's kind of a tangent, but I think it's very important to understand, because I think a lot of the populist candidates, quote unquote, in this election cycle, they may be populist in terms of policy or whatever. They present themselves like elites. They are total elitists in many ways. And it's like, if we're going to run off the model of Trump, we have to understand a big reason why Trump is powerful, a big reason why Trump is successful is, again, because Republican voters relate to him. They understand him. They trust him. And it's very hard to come up as an academic and say, whoa, here's, why we need this policy to bring back American manufacturing and tariffs and family tax policy. It's like, it's very important to understand that resonates with no one if you're not going to be willing to say you're going to stand up and fight, if you're not going to be the flamethrower against the Republican establishment. That's very important to understand. Sam Matson says $5. He says none of the other candidates inspired former Democrats to become Republicans. Trump did. Very true. Very true. So, and it's important the reachable former Democrats, right? Because when we say former Democrats, we're not talking about, the 2020 effort to like get inner city Black Americans en masse who are like very hard to the left, very loyal to the Democratic Party, right? To get them to vote for Trump because of criminal justice reform. The original Trump got mainly kind of like union working class Democrats from, the Midwest and whatnot, who a lot of these people are like legacy Democrats because Democrats used to be the party of the working class, specifically like the northern white working class, right? That was a big demographic of the Democratic constituency. And Trump managed to kind of break these people off culturally in many ways, the legacy Democrats, because of those things. But it's very important to understand when we say former Democrats, that's also who we're talking about, right? Not like, oh, Tim Scott's going to go win the black vote because no, that's not what we're talking about necessarily, right? We're more so talking about, I guess the former Democrats, you could say, that are politically reachable en masse when it comes to more than just a few voters, right? I think that's important to understand. But anyways, let's finish up the article here, folks, because this is still disgraceful. Donald Trump has spent the last 15 months pretending that, okay, we can't talk about that on YouTube. But anyways, the Republican Party did not go back to Gerald Ford in 1980 or George H.W. Bush in 1996 or Bob Dole in 2000 or John McCain in 2012 or Mitt Romney in 2016. It should not. Hey, what about Richard Nixon? That is so dishonest because, yeah, okay, but if you go back one more, you literally get a guy who, 1960, that election was very interesting. A lot of interesting, curious things happened in that election, but Nixon loses. He literally came back and, had the Republican Party at the time. Hey, many such cases. You see how history repeats itself? Had the Republican Party not betrayed, basically at the time, the most popular president in American history, in terms of the electoral vote, at least, had they not just turned their back on him at slight pressure, he would have finished out his term. So it's like, what are you talking about, dude? Oh, but see, look at these past examples of guys we didn't run twice. Okay. What about Richard Nixon? It doesn't even make sense. But yeah. Christopher Laurie says Trump is like Andrew Jackson or Teddy Roosevelt, anti-corruption warriors. Why do you think the elites hated them so much? Yeah, I agree with this assessment. And let me just say, I'm not the biggest Andrew Jackson fan, but I definitely think that in terms of his legacy, significance, yeah, I would absolutely agree that Trump is akin to these figures, right? He really is that type of warrior, right? That really does, it's the same thing as I wouldn't say it's the same thing, but it's like Robert Taft. He was just not what Teddy Roosevelt is, right? Same logic, same idea here. So, that's this article. Actually, wait. Oh, never mind. I think we did finish it. But yeah, this guy's a senior writer for the National Review, so that should tell you a lot. The man lost. He's a loser. It's time we picked a winner for the change. Yeah, it's time we picked a winner because as we know, folks, the greatest winners of the 20th and 21st century of the Republican establishment, the conservative establishment, these are the real winners. It's time we pick the winners from the hand-picked losers. Where do I have beautiful losers sitting here? I don't. But the beautiful losers, as Sam Francis coined them in the 90s. That's who we ought to pick, folks. That's who we need. Okay, Trump is a loser. We got to get winners. We got to get winners like the people who have literally lost. They literally were handed our country and they lost. They literally gave it up. They lost our whole country in front of our eyes. And they have the nerve to stand up and say, it's time we picked winners for a change. The conservative establishment knows how to do nothing except lose. You guys are literally controlled opposition. You guys have allowed the left to take over everything over the past few decades. How long has the National Review has been around? The National Review was founded by William Buckley and who's the other guy? It was Buckley, right? I think it was founded by Buckley, right? Back in the 1960s. Okay, so is Young America's Foundation, which I think Buckley also got started or whatever. What have these people won? These people have been around since the 60s, and they've literally watched as, they were handed the post-1950s. They were handed that America, that nuclear family, great rock and roll America. They were handed that. They were given control of that. They were given control of that conservative movement, and they squandered it. Okay, now at the point where we have like child drag queens and all that stuff, and it's like, who is the conservative establishment? Who is the National Review? Of all entities in this country, who is the National Review to say that it's time we pick winners? Okay, these are the people who lost our freaking country. They are. It's time we pick the winners for a change. It's time we pick the winners. Like Barry Goldwater. Geez, it's very sad. I mean, these people are a joke. It's time we pick the winner for a change. Yeah. Yeah, this is the winner right here, guys. He's stealing my haircut, by the way. Look at this. Only I'm allowed to have the O'Hare haircut, which I don't have anymore, but still. Yeah, the other state, he's stealing my haircut, and he's a senior. It's not good, folks. But yeah, let's see. These guys seriously think that Tim Scott would go out there and win Wisconsin. No, I know. Tim Scott is so, he's a neocon, by the way. He sucks, but people literally, like, the Republican establishment seriously just thinks that because he's black, they can just ride his identity politics to some type of electoral victory. Like, that's just not going to happen. Okay, that's just not going to happen. He's boring. He sucks. He's unrelatable. He's pretentious. He's entirely mediocre. And by the way, his policies suck. I mean, he's atrocious. He's in lockstep with Lindsey Graham and all those people. Although it shouldn't be surprising, right? Because what did this guy say? What does this guy undermine Mitch McConnell? I mean, that's what he wants. He wants Mitch McConnell heads in office. And it's like, the Republican Party of Mitch McConnell, they know how to win. Trump is a loser. You know what I mean? But yeah, I mean, Tim. Why do people think that Tim Scott is like a remotely electable guy? Because he's black? That's really all it is. Because he's black. He's not an impressive guy. He's a terrible speaker. His policy sucks. His only legacy there is literally just woke social policy, okay? What is his biggest accomplishment? Criminal justice reform, police reform? Oh, I cave to the left. Therefore, the left will vote for me. Yeah, how does that work for every other Republican we've tried to have do that? Andrew M. says, as much as I love Trump, he was too socially liberal in terms of gay marriage. If he was harder on gay marriage, I'm sure he would have won more Hispanics. Well, I think that is that is like the actual valid criticism of Trumpism, right? The actual valid criticism of Trumpism is that in many ways, he was pretty good on abortion, right? At least in terms of policy, right? They say he's the most pro-life president in modern history. Okay, whatever. I hope that's true. But yeah, it's very true. Like the gay marriage thing, he did say in the 2016 campaign trail that he was for traditional marriage. But beyond that, he waved the LGBT flag at that Colorado rally in 2016. He gets into office. He's not going to do anything about it. You have Rick Grinnell. You have all this stuff. But again, I think it's important to understand that you look at what the RNC has done since then, right? And so, yes, they're right that in many ways, Trump kind of did buck from what the conservative movement was doing for a while in terms of the gay issue, in terms of the LGBT issue. But then look what the RNC has done since Trump has left office. Instead of going back to their previous ways, which they did a lot of other issues, right? On taxes and all these other things, notice this, very important. On these other things, they throw out the legacy of Trumpism. But what has the RNC done, right? They've launched the Pride Coalition. You've seen this, right? I'm sure people have heard about this. The 2022 RNC Pride Coalition. So they're doubling down on the LGBT stuff, right? Now that Trump is gone. And so it's not like, I don't like how Trump is on this issue either. But it is important to recognize. And look at this too. Was it ever a criticism by the National Review, by this guy, of the LGBT thing, or Trump wasn't socially conservative enough? Like, no. So that's what's important to understand, right? He is too socially liberal in terms of this stuff. It's true. But the Republican Party, at least now, is even more socially liberal than him. And you can see that, right? You can see that. By the way, I rumors say I may be publishing an article in a quite prominent paleo-conservative magazine. I'm not going to say which one it is, but let me just say it kind of rose to prominence during Buchanan's runs for president or whatever. I may be publishing a kind of an op-ed on this very topic in one of those magazines sometime this week. So stay tuned. It might happen. Okay. But yeah, I mean, you see this, the RNC Pride Coalition, right? So it is true. It is a valid criticism. There are lots of valid criticisms of Trump, but none of the ones you see in this, obviously, right? All the ones you see in this are completely invalid ones. So RNC has to go back to biblical marriage, man and woman only, end of story. Yeah, I agree. But you're not going to get this, right? And you notice, too, that the only Republicans, I think, or conservatives out there that would, because I don't think you're ever going to win Trump over on the gay marriage issue, if I'm being honest. You can be maximized in 2024. I think in his heart he just doesn't believe that. I don't think he's very woke based on that issue. I just don't think he is. But I think it's important to understand the very people that are based on it, right? The people that do get it, the people that really do support traditional marriage, they're all aligned with Trump, right? So it's Trump himself, not the best on that question, but all of the people who are good on that issue, right? They're all aligned with Trump. You're not going to go from handpick anyone from the Republican establishment. You won't find a single one of those people that is any better on the LGBT thing than Trump is. And that includes Ron DeSantis. That includes him, So don't say gay thing or whatever. No, I mean, it's a good bill, I guess. It really doesn't go far enough. I mean, third grade, you just can't teach it before third grade. Yeah, what does that do? Oh, we can teach it now in fourth grade. And now, now we've really stopped pedophilia from and the LGBT ideology from reaching our kids. Okay. But it's just true. None of the Republicans you will handpick from the Republican establishment will ever be better. They'll be worse on the LGBT thing. The only people that exist that are better on it align with the Trump movement. And so it's from Trump circles that you can pick those out of, but you never get a good one from the Republican establishment. So Sam Matson says, as we know, Scott and Rubio will be having packed rallies in Uniontown, Pennsylvania, talking about criminal justice reform. It's so true. It's so true. You have these rural working class Americans, that's what they really want to hear. They're watching their countries get invaded with drugs, and the opioids are killing their children. And, they haven't had a good job since 1990, and their towns are hollowed out. Their factories are desolated. They're importing migrant workers that just make the town, an economic and social and political mess. But what these people really want to hear about is the criminal justice reform, as we well know, right? Tim Scott's going to go to, like you said, Uniontown, Pennsylvania, and he's just going to win 100% of that WWC vote by, talking about, well, here's the criminal justice reform I passed under Trump that actually got people killed, by the way. I don't know if you guys know this. The First Step Act actually caused some people to get murdered by people that the act released. But, it's true. But anyways, this is very telling, folks. This is very telling. And like I said at the beginning of the stream, I think it's very important to point out, this is just basically how the Republican establishment really feels about him. Charles, honestly, credits Charles Cook, because he's bold enough to say it, right? Lindsey Graham won't say it. He'll implicitly counter-signal Trump, and he does that all the time. He won't come out and say this. Obviously not. Mitch McConnell won't come out there and say this. Kevin McCarthy won't come out there and say this. Mike Pence won't come out there and say, none of them will actually say this out loud, but, this is exactly how the rest of them feel. In many ways, he's writing this on their behalf. And it tells you a lot. What exactly are they looking for? They're looking for someone who, I think this is the most telling line in the whole article. They're looking for someone who won't undermine Mitch McConnell. Very telling. Very, very, very telling. Okay. Brave but foolish, to quote, is that episode 2? Yeah, brave but foolish. That's what he is. But at least he's brave. At least he's brave because, this is how they all, see this highlighted line right here? Here, let's highlight this part. This is how all the Republicans in DC think about Trump, In fact, let me just say, I don't know how much of this I'm allowed to share, but I was talking to someone once who was close to Trump, and he told me about how he was he's been around people like in private functions, around people like, Nikki Haley and whatnot. And he says, yeah, like this is how they secretly talk about Trump, behind his back, which should not be. I don't think anyone surprised by that? Is anyone surprised that like Nikki Haley privately, always ridicules Trump and how stupid he thinks he is or whatever? Like, no, am I even really like leaking information by saying that? No, like we all know that's how she feels. But yeah, it's very important to understand like that's how all the Republican establishment thinks about Trump behind the scenes. So I think it's very key to ask as a Republican voter who likes Trump, it's like, who are you going to side with? Because the truth is you can't side with both. Too many MAGA boomers think they can side with, normie Republicans and Donald Trump at the same time. And it's like, yes, there's too much of an alliance, way more than there should be, but it's very important to understand all the people that you're like, well, what's so bad about Tim Scott? What's so bad about these people? This is how I hope people understand this. This is how they feel. This is how all these people feel about Trump behind the scenes. Okay. Every single word of this article, you should read this and be like, this isn't even Charles Cook speaking. Like Mitch McConnell, this is Mitch McConnell speaking. This is like all of the Republicans we are suspicious of. This is all of them speaking. Like, it's so true. It's so true. I don't know how much more we want to talk about this. I feel like people get it. But Nikki Haley is cringe. It's so true. It's so true. She's very cringe. Matt Heilman. He's Matt, you're really walking on thin ice here. All right. He's running for a state house in North Dakota. Okay, great guy. But we give him the APU endorsement. This is how you repay me, Matt. You repay me by constantly spreading the rumors that I work for Reason TV and that I miss John McCain. Okay, this guy Matt, he's a class clown. He really is. He really is a class clown. Chat says, hey, Vince, I've been struggling with this. C.S. Lewis says that we should forgive our enemies and love them as we love ourselves, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't punish them. Is there a conflict? Well, this is not just C.S. Lewis speaking. This is God's word, right? This is paraphrase. This is what the Bible teaches. But I think it's important to understand that, I talk about this a lot, but your concept of love, in many ways, our concept of love is not derived from honest love, is not derived from Christianity, right? When we say love nowadays, again, this is the same thing as when, woke leftists or whatever try to say, well, you claim to love gay people, but you tell them to like turn from their sin. Like, how do you really love them, right? But that's important. Love does not equate tolerance, right? And so that's I think that's the mistake that people make a lot of times with love, is they equate love to be like vain, shallow tolerance of people. And so it's like, that's why when you actually try to say, hey, I love you, therefore I want you to stop doing this, I'm going to try to like help you here. That's why a lot of people say, well, you don't really love me. It's like, no, you really do love that person. It's like, if you have a child and let's just say that child is a drug addict, right? What's the loving act? Does loving act to say, oh, honey, I love you as you are. Honey, I think it's, I don't know, but if that's what you want to do, that's fine. Is that the loving act, or is the loving act to say, I'm not going to just stand by and let you like destroy yourself, right? And so I think it's very important to understand that, honestly, and like biblically speaking, the concept of love does not equate the concept of just tolerance or whatever. In fact, to love someone, you have to be ruthlessly intolerant of that which destroys them. But with that said, yes, the Bible does tell us to, forgive our enemies and, to love our enemies, actually, as a matter of fact, and to turn the other cheek. And I think that's a very true principle we ought to hold in our hearts, right? Because I think that, and people might not understand this because I talked all this whole stream about how Trump being vindictive is going to be a good thing for us politically. But no, I'm talking on it like for us, right? For us, honestly, on our hearts. Yeah, it's not good to hold, grudges, in the sense that people who are unable to forgive, the social science backs it up, by the way. They end up being miserable. They end up being unhappy. But with that said, that concept of love does not have to equate not giving people justice, right? Ultimately, God is the ultimate judge, right? But that's important for even to understand, like, God loves humanity, but in the end, he is the judge of humanity, right? He judges, obviously, what we've done in our lives, and obviously all of us are condemned, but those of us who have found Christ, right, he saves us. But that's important to understand. Like God loves us, but he's also the judge of us, right? I think I don't know if I'm really articulating that correctly, but I think that you absolutely can love someone. You can love your enemies, and yes, you should not hold the constant. It's hard not to. It's hard not to when you see what's going on in our country. You should not hold like that constant grudge in your heart that consumes you, right? Like that's not what Christians are supposed to do. But at the same time, that's not to say you can't have justice, right? That's not to say you can't find justice. It's more so that shouldn't be obsessed to it with the point where it consumes you, right? But I think that you absolutely still can achieve justice, if that makes sense. You know what I'm saying? Courtney says, I think you can treat someone with love while recognizing that they need to face justice for their sins against others. Don't act with spite or vengeance and wish that God will work on their hearts. Well, exactly. This is basically what I would say too. And yes, this is true. People forget the difference between wanting justice and wanting revenge. Exactly. That's how you ought to view justice. It's not, it's not that like I'm getting payback on you. It's more so that like I'm giving you basically what you deserve. You know what I mean? I'm giving you justice. I'm giving you justice for what you have done to others or whatever. You know what I'm saying? So Vince is coming for John Stossel's job. It's Matt. The utter state of Matt Heilman. I am coming for John Stossel's job because APU TV will replace Reason TV. They will. It's actually basically inevitable because libertarianism is a dying trend. It really is a dying influence. Let me see here. Thoughts on dark MAGA. I don't entirely understand what people mean by this, but I think it's just basically, my understanding is it's just basically the concept that like Trump is going to go full, he's going to go full sicko mode when he takes office in 2024, right? It's like you saw the light MAGA. He was friendly to the Republican establishment, whatever. Now it's going to be like, now it's war, right? Now it's a war against the political establishment. So dark MAGA is based. We fully endorse dark MAGA. It's true. It's coming. Dark MAGA is inevitable. Like it actually is. So chat says, so because we want the good of that person and the Christian thing for a guilty person is to face punishment, we should punish the guilty and want the good of that person because we don't want him to sin. Well, the Christian thing is not necessarily, I would say the Christian thing is for a guilty person is to face punishment because as God forgives, we are supposed to forgive as well. I think it's just more so that, you absolutely can love people, but have a justice system in society at the same time, right? At the same time, right, we should have a justice system that, that seeks to get repentance out of people and that, does genuinely forgive people when they genuinely repent. But like I said, I don't think it's like, if someone, yes, we're supposed to forgive, we're supposed to turn the other cheek. But if someone is just literally just going around killing people, like as the Christian thing to do is like, we have to put a stop to that, you're just going out and killing others, that's what you're doing. He's going out killing others, going out hurting others, it's not that it's that like, hopefully you give that person justice, but then hopefully like, they repent of doing that and you want to encourage them to do that. But it's like, you have to put a stop to them going out and just like hurting people, we're supposed to protect the innocent, and so if people are going out openly hurting the innocent and in whatever way they are, then like, we have to step in for that. We have to stop that from happening, so. Is Trump about to become Batman, LMAO? It's so true. It's actually so true. DeSantis endorses Larry Hogan for Senate. Not true. Okay, not true. It's just, no, it's not. There are people on Twitter that do. I don't even care, okay? I mean, really, in many ways, I'm against Larry Hogan for Senate, but it's just like all these people who are like, we're going to have one more Republican senator. It's like, no, he's going to be an annoying Joe Manchin or whatever. I don't even want to have to deal with that. I'd rather just know what we have than have like, a flake vote or whatever, if I'm being totally honest. Lord Trigger says, what are your thoughts on the line between justice and revenge? Can someone who goes too far still be considered just? I think it's a hard thing, right? It's a hard question. I don't know if I really have the immediate answer for it. I think it's something that, you like, yes, you want justice while avoiding revenge, right? And the easy thing to say is that, well, we know it's justice when like justice is being done. We know it's revenge when you're not doing it out of just a sense of justice, but a sense that like, I'm mad at you because you did this. Now I'm going to hurt you for it, But that principle is easy to articulate, very hard to actually put into practice. It's complicated. It is complicated. And so, I guess what I would say is that I don't know. It's a discernment thing. I mean, it really is, right? This is part of why I never want to work in the government, because I feel like it's a very thin line I have to walk, So it's like, I can stand on the outside and just pray for these people, but it's like if I'm the inside, I'm met with this question like, what do you do about this type of stuff, And it's genuinely very difficult. So it's like I will use the vocabulary of revenge against the political establishment or whatever, right? But the way I see it is not that I want revenge on any of these people. Like, I don't actively seek those things. I try not to. Sometimes I'm like, but you know what I mean? I really try not to in my heart. But at the same time, for the sake of the fact that the political establishment, the political class obviously is hurting people and doing a lot of wrong to people I want them out of power, right? So, like, if for instance, if Donald Trump sees it as revenge and he gets them out of power, then, the shoe fits, I guess. You know what I'm saying? I don't see it as I want revenge on these people. I want to pray for these people, right? But I more so see it as that, like, these people need to be taken out of power, okay? Not calling for revolution or something, but like they need to be taken out of power because they are destructive. They are hurting people. They're leading a bunch of other people to hell with them. They're wrecking the country, obviously. And so that's my primary motivation is like, I'm trying to put a stop to the suffering here. You see what I'm saying? I'm trying to put a stop to them hurting all these innocent people, right? But that's more so my primary motivation, more than like, I'm angry at you. It's more so that like, I want their wickedness to be ended, right? And so I think that's probably the way we should see it. Like I do actually pray for the people who run our country, and it's hard to like on it. Yes, it is genuinely hard to sometimes. It's genuinely hard to like say, you know what I mean? Because we really are like angry at them, and then it's very hard to sit and watch everything that they do and not want serious revenge for all that they've done. But it's not healthy. It really is not healthy. That anger will consume you. It will turn you to the dark side. No, just kidding. But like it will not make you a healthy, happy person, Social science vindicates this too. Like people who are able to forgive, people who are able to turn the other cheek, they often are much, much happier, right? And so, that's not me. Again, this is not me saying that like we shouldn't get these people out of office. I'm just saying that it's more so the way I see it, the way I see, the political class and the media class, all, the system, the regime. I more so see it as not, I want revenge because I hate you. It's more so just that like, you are hurting people. We need to replace your power with our power because what you're doing is terrible. You see what I'm saying? You see what I'm saying? So, anyways, views to like ratio almost 1-to-1. Well, while we're on that topic, be sure to leave a like on the stream. Be sure to leave a like on the stream, guys. Right now, do it. Go leave a like. Go leave a like. So I will. Ron Reagan is trying. Did Ron Reagan? Should we react to Ron Reagan? I kind of want to react to Ron Reagan. Ron Reagan is a clown. So it's almost like when you follow God's word, things generally turn out better. No, it is. It is. Like, I won't lie. Yes, it is true that most political movements throughout history have been led by like angry people. Sure, that's true. But I'm just saying on a personal level, okay? It's obviously sinful. It's not what God wants. But I would say, even from a secular perspective, people who hold constant like vindictiveness in their heart, even if that vindictiveness in a way is righteous, right? It's not healthy for you. I'm just telling you, like, it's not. It's not, okay? And I see conservatives who have this problem. I honestly have this problem sometimes, not so much anymore, but I used to struggle a lot with it. It's like when you're constantly just angry and want revenge on all these people, you're a miserable person inside. Like, honestly, even if that anger, and I'm not going to say that anger is unrighteous or unfounded, because I understand. I think it comes from a genuinely good place, but holding on to that in your heart, it's not healthy. It's really not healthy, you know. So, yeah, the Freedom for Religious Foundation, the utter state of that. The utter state of that. So, it's hard. Okay, I get it. It's very hard. It is very hard to watch what is happening in our country and not get angry. You should get angry. It's more so, should you hold, like, you know, that sense of like revenge and vindictiveness in your heart. It's hard not to. I know it's hard not to. But, you know, let's look at some other chats here, folks. Let's take a look at some other ones. Okay, who's Larry Hook? I don't even know who Larry Hook is. Low energy Jeb Bush or Little Marco 2024. I'd probably just vote third party, to be honest, but assuming these are the only two choices, I think Marco's much better than Jeb. He's not close. Like, Marco's not that great, but he's a lot better than Jeb, okay? Jeb is awful. Marco sometimes actually tries to, like, he tries to give a nod to like Trumpian populism, at least sometimes. I don't trust him, but I'd prefer that over Jeb Bush. That's not even a hard question for me. Now I'd probably just vote third party. I'd probably not vote for either of them. But if you're really giving me this, what's the binary choice? I think it's pretty. I think it's definitely Marco, but you know. Vince, what are your thoughts on the Sunshine Protection Act? So if I'm not mistaken, this is basically to get rid of the whole daylight savings time thing, right? I don't know. I'm not a fan of the whole daylight savings thing, but part of me just feels like it's a psyop. I don't know. It's like, why is when Congress and Biden are so unpopular, they're going to do so? Oh, most Americans hate daylight savings time. Oh, I guess we can get at them by passing this. It'll help us. I don't trust the motives. Folks. You know what? Daylight savings time has been a tradition. I don't care how bad it sucks. It's been a tradition. Therefore, it must be preserved. I don't even know. I really don't know how I feel about it. I don't like it personally, but part of me feels like the whole effort to get rid of it is very cringe and just led by a bunch of complainers. And so, like, I almost want to hold on to it just for that, even though I personally am not a big fan of it at all. So I like it. I like the extra hour of daylight. I mean, I do too. I don't know. But that's the thing too, is like, if we see, the nice part of daylight savings is when you gain an hour, right? If we kept daylight savings, we would lose an hour and never gain it back. I feel like that kind of sucks. I feel like, yeah, it's 1 hour, but like, that's an extra hour of sleep that we're never getting back because we were like, oh, we don't like daylight savings time, you know? I don't know, just my opinion. Mr. E says, I believe a difference revenge is like taking things. I think this is a good take. It's like taking things in your own hands despite lacking necessary authority, whereas justice works within good parameters. Yeah, I think that's a good take. I think that's a good take. The sun setting at 4 p.m. in the winter is disappointing. It sets at 4. I guess, I don't know. You probably live up north. Here in Florida, it sets at like 5. It's kind of I don't know. Sunset at 5 o'clock. It actually kind of makes sense. 5 o'clock is supposed to be like when everything is done, right? You get out of work. Isn't happy hour? When's happy hour? 6 o'clock. I don't even know. 6 o'clock, 5 o'clock, whatever. It's like you're supposed to be getting off of work. It's the end of the day's kind of over. I don't know. It's not that bad, honestly, but I do like just having an extra hour of daylight. It just feels like the day is longer. You have more time to get stuff done, but I don't know. I don't know. I don't really care, if I'm being totally honest. Like both right and left want to LARP against daylight savings time, but the fact that they are just inherently makes me want to defend daylight savings time. Okay. When I see the worst people saying, "Oh, daylight savings, we gotta get rid of it. It's so annoying," I just want to stand up and say, "Actually, daylight savings time is based. Screw you, dude." I don't know. I just have that instinct inside of me. I don't know. So I'm not Northern lol. Where are you that it sets at 4 o'clock? I've never seen why did my computer do that? Okay, I've actually never seen. It basically just makes daylight savings time permanent. Again, I mean, I don't have hot take. I don't have that much of a problem with daylight savings. It's annoying, sure. It's weird how everything changes. I guess you could say it throws off your circadian rhythm or something. But I honestly, I don't have much of a problem with it. Okay, maybe that's a hot take. I don't know. I don't know. It's more so that I just get annoyed by the people who are so adamant about getting rid of it. They're just annoying. I don't know why. So I don't want to support it. That's the truth. That's the truth. We can change clock. Exactly. We can change clocks twice a year. Not that hard. We live in a lazy society. I don't know. All I know is that the people who complain about daylight savings time the most are all those like annoying liberals from California growing up that they did it back then and they do it now. And so the instinct in me wants to just be like, no. No, we're gonna keep it. We're gonna keep it because you don't like it. So therefore, it's staying in office. It will be one of the only cultural victories for conservatives in the past 50 years. We kept daylight savings time. We could serve. We can no longer say, what if conservatives can serve? Because guess what we can serve? We can serve daylight savings time. We're so back. We're actually so back. So, isn't Arizona the? Yes, Arizona is the one that doesn't change it. So. As a conservative fighting against a satanic regime, am I supposed to believe, or am I supposed to take contrarian as an insult? Is it so wrong to be contrarian? I don't think so. No, it's not wrong to be contrarian. You're right. There's nothing inherently right with being contrarian, but I mean, in this society, yes, it's very right to be contrarian, Tulsi Gabbard or Mitt Romney? That's a good question. I neither. Can I just say neither? I don't know. You see, you can make an argument for why, yes, Tulsi Gabbard is pro-choice, but Mitt Romney also wouldn't defend life if push came to shove. So I don't know if you could say that. Tulsi's definitely better on foreign policy. I would make a case. Well, I don't know. Tulsi's less annoying. That's all I have to say about her. I don't know. I don't like. Can I just cop out and say on either of them? I don't know. I don't have an answer for you. I don't like either of them. So what am I supposed to say? Maybe Mitt Romney's worse because he's a Republican. He calls himself a Republican. So maybe I'll say that. Because at least Tulsi's an independent or whatever, Tell politicians that are dying main streets are. You're so true. So true. We should say, look at the opioid crisis and going on in Ukraine. Point to it. It's like Ohio. There's an opioid crisis going on in Ukraine. They're going to be like, America. And, it's going to be fixed overnight. It really will. It's so true. Dudes who simp for Tulsi have a mommy fetish. Let's be real. Many such cases, I will say. You know, all the Tulsi Gabbard stands, at least on the, I don't know about the left, at least on the right nowadays. Well, I think it's always been this way. You know, it's mainly because they find her attractive. That's really what it is. That's really what it is. Which is just weird. I mean, I'll be honest. I don't find the concept of a female politician to be attractive. Okay, like I could never be attracted to someone who's like to a female politician. I could never marry. My wife could never be a politician. Like I would not let that happen. Okay. Realistically, my wife wouldn't work at all. But like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I especially couldn't do that. But most of these guys who also simp for her are like 18, 17, 16 years old. She's like in her 30s, dude. It's weird. The MILF thing, the mommy fetish, it's very odd. It's very odd. It's off. It's off. Like I feel like it's emasculating to want a woman who's like several years older than you and like more mature than you. Okay? Okay? And you could argue like I guess pornography in that culture has like made this a thing. I don't know if it was always a thing, but I don't understand it. Like I feel like it's emasculating. I feel like, you know, I guess that's the problem. It's the problem with men, is it not? Men in general are emasculated, but like the whole MILF thing really doesn't make sense to me, you know? It is. It's simp culture. I mean, it's like effeminate male culture is what it is. We have effeminate men, and so like they're attracted to strong women. It's like, you see, whereas I don't know, whereas someone like people like us, we look at like girl bosses and we're like totally turned off by that. You know, they look at a girl boss and be like, "Oh, be my mommy, be my mommy." It's like, no, you're supposed to marry your wife, not your mommy. Okay, like it's just weird. It's weird. It's weird. It's wrong. It's off. It's not true. If only the Republicans were about traditional conservative values as they are to Ukraine. Same with the so-called conservative news networks. I mean, I don't have much to say to that other than it's true. It's so true, and it's 100% accurate. So many such cases, by the way, many such cases. I've always found guys dating older women to be so cringy. I mean, yeah, I mean, like within like a few years when you're older, especially, like, yeah, you're basically when you're about the same age, okay, but like more than like 5 to 10 years older, yeah, it's weird. It's very weird. Mitt Romney is a Rhino Democrat. Meanwhile, Tulsi Gabbard is a member of the World Economic Forum. Do I really have to choose between one of them? Like, do I really have to? I don't want either of them. I don't want either of them in the tent, okay? I don't know. You know, the real take, and I'm probably going to make you a video about this tomorrow or something. The real take, the take nobody's ready for is that Elon Musk sucks. Okay? That's the real take. I'm going to be making a video about it probably tomorrow, okay? Because most right-wingers seem to like Elon Musk. And by the way, let me just say, my case against Elon Musk is not primarily just that, like, he's too moderate politically or whatever. That's not the reason why. I'll give the take tomorrow. I'm going to save it for tomorrow. But, you know, Elon Musk, that's another one. Don't trust him. I'm going to tell you why not to trust him tomorrow. And it's not just because he's too moderate. I'm not trying to say, oh, cannibalize everyone. No. That's actually not the reason why. Elon Musk is a psyop to get conservatives to submit to the technocracy or whatever you want to call it, because he's like popular with them and he's like anti-woke. He's a psyop. Understand it. We'll talk about it tomorrow. They want people to stay out later so they can party and be degenerate even more than they already are. Is that the super big brain take on daylight savings time? I guess so, but the other side of that is the darker it gets earlier, they also start the party earlier. So I feel like that's I don't know if that would actually happen like that. I don't know if they would. But yeah, don't trust Elon Musk. Like, honestly, don't. So, anyways, folks, we'll go to like the full Q&A part soon. But I want to see, because everyone's talking about Tucker Carlson and Maria Salazar. I want to see if it's on Fox yet, because I have not seen this. I didn't see this happen. Here we go. 18 minutes. Jeez. Okay. Yeah, well, all right. We'll react to this.
So things are changing very fast.
Everyone's talking about this. I haven't seen it, so let's take a look.
For weeks, leaders in Washington told us that an American-backed no-fly zone in Ukraine would be unwise because it would amount to an act of war against a nuclear-armed Russia. As you can see, those views have evolved a lot. But in fairness, Congresswoman Maria Salazar got there first. Salazar is a longtime news anchor from Miami who a little over a year ago was elected to Congress as a Republican. She now sits on the Foreign Affairs Committee. A week ago, a reporter from the Gray Zone asked Salazar what she thought of a no-fly zone. Here's what she said.
Do you support a no-fly zone in Ukraine?
I support everything that has to do with punishing Vladimir Putin and helping the Ukrainians.
Wouldn't that mean direct?
Yeah. So this is the Republican Congresswoman out of Miami who supports a no-fly zone in Ukraine, which is insane. It's literally an insane idea. It's like basically destined to provoke World War III. But Maria Salazar, she's going to own the libs by provoking World War III. Okay. That's what we're talking about here. What an idiotic idea. Imagine actually believing in that.
Warfare with Russia.
I don't know what it will mean, but freedom is not free.
So you don't know what a no-fly zone will mean. If you have to shoot down Russia.
What a neocon. Freedom is not free. Gay rights in Ukraine are not free. They must be paid for with nuclear war and American blood. Okay.
Russian planes, I mean.
Of course.
Of course.
I don't know what it will mean, but freedom is not free. Now, we made fun of that answer last week when we first showed you that clip. But now what we mocked is the consensus in Washington. We don't know what's going to happen. We've got to do it immediately. That's the argument you're hearing. At this point, no one wants to say it out loud, but it is true. At this point, a shooting war with Russia seems inevitable. How could war with Russia not be inevitable? Virtually everyone with power is for it. We remain against it. We think that joining a war in Eastern Europe will hurt this country. Though, to be clear, when and if that war starts, we will be praying passionately for America's total victory. Unlike so many in the foreign policy establishment, we love this country above all, and we mean it. But in the meantime, while the United States is still technically at peace, we thought it'd be worth asking people who are calling for war if they have considered in detail what a war would mean for this country. Congresswoman Maria Salazar was gracious enough to accept our invitation to come on the show. We're grateful she did. She joins us tonight. Congresswoman, thanks so much for coming on.
Of course. Thank you for inviting me.
Well, yes. So since you have called for war with Russia, how
so
do you
true.
think
Such a good
that
take.
war, once it begins, would play out?
I think that's a hypothetical question.
It's not a hypothetical question. What do you think happens when you institute a no-fly zone over another country's war going on? You know, a no-fly zone means that if Russia flies jets into Ukrainian airspace, you're going to shoot them down. That's an act of war. It's going to provoke war. Like, this is common sense, not like complicated to understand, dude.
Tucker, in what Zelensky asked Congress today.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I can't. No, and I'm in no way trying to cut you off. But I can't let you allot over that. You said
this is true. This is true.
Planes. That's of course war. Since you've called for that, and you are a member of Congress.
I think.
Well, you just said on the tape we played.
That was taken. Yeah, but that was taken out of context because I said, of course, that I know what that means. That interview was not very well conducted, and that's why I'm here, because I want to clarify my position. Okay. And my position is that we should not take the no-fly zone off the table. But before that, that's two. We need to do one, and one is
we should not take. Why should we not take it off the table? It's an insane idea. It's actually insane. The fact that it is on the table is just a red flag. Like that's actually terrifying. Like, what do you mean?
To give Zelensky exactly what he's asking for. No troops on the ground. Let's give him the MiGs and the S-300s, what he needs to defend his own airspace. So he will create his own no-fly zone. And that's what I think we should have done months ago. It's embarrassing that this guy, this president, who is under the bullets, has come to Congress to beg for us to give him something that we should have done a long time ago.
Oh yeah, let's send. I've talked about this so many times by now, but it's like, yeah, let's just send a bunch of arms to a foreign rival's border to fight that foreign rival with. And, you know, we're not trying to provoke World War III. We just think it's like, remember the Cuban Missile Crisis? Okay. Or let's put it like this. How would we react if China or Russia sent, fighter jets and missiles and tanks and all that stuff to Cuba or to Mexico for them to fight us with? That's literally an act of, like, that is an act of war. Americans would perceive it as an act of war. Russians perceive it as an act of war too, by the way. Okay. So why do we even entertain ideas? And this is considered the reasonable thing. It's like, why weren't we doing that a long time ago? Okay.
Okay,
That's
let me
my
be clear.
position.
Let me be clear.
True.
When you say we should give President Zelensky what he's asking for, he demanded today, I think you were there, that the United States enforce the no-fly zone. But so you are for denying him that.
Well, but he also said, and then we can give you alternatives. So since we know that that should not be taken off the table, and I repeat it, I do believe that we should go to plan A, which is to give them all the military weapons that he's asking for.
Okay.
Because
well, I
if
think
we
a lot
do
of people
not
sympathize with that. Let me just say, I think a lot of people who saw
Okay.
President Zelensky's speech today and who've seen the atrocities in Ukraine.
I don't think the Ukrainians would know what the heck to do with it. Like, every time, I'm sure the Ukrainian military is more competent than, like, these insurgents we trained in Syria, but by a lot. We give them, like, fancy fighter jets. They're just going to end up in, like, Russian hands, dude. You have repainted Russian F-22s flying around.
Feel deep
Libs
sympathy
owned.
for the Ukrainian people and want this to end. I'm certainly among them. But I'm wondering
I'm
about
sure
the
you are.
implications.
So then I'm asking you,
let me
so then what
finish.
should we do? Okay. All right. So what should we do then?
Always and
Many such
everywhere,
cases.
especially for the U.S. government or one of its elected representatives, act on behalf of the core interests of the United States government. It's really super simple.
True.
So if the United States is providing
let me just tell you now that you said that.
Hold on.
Okay.
If the United States is providing weapons to one side in a war, how is that not participating in the war?
Listen, now let me just backtrack and say that you say that we're supposed to be representing the American people. I represent District Number 27, where you have millions of Cuban Americans, and I'm representing what we think. We know that we acquire peace through strength. Look at what happened in 1960.
Peace is when we send.
I'm sorry. I'm not going to take the anti-communist lecture from anybody because, of course, I agree with you.
No.
And by the way,
I'm just
I
saying
hope
that
you're not
history.
speaking.
Hold on. Talk about 1960. That's her example. 1960 is literally an example when World War III almost started because guess what? The Soviet Union tried to put nuclear weapons basically on our border. If you're going to use 1960 as an example, it's an example of why you should not provoke foreign nations by sending arms to the countries at their borders when they don't want it. Come on.
For, quote, Cuban Americans, but
The
for all
utter
Americans,
state.
because it's not a racial question. It's a question of
I'm talking about
national interest.
I'm representing District Number 27.
I understand. But I'm just saying, right, I got it. And I'm as against communism, I think, as anybody. But my question is, if we are providing weapons to one side in a war, I think it's fair to ask, maybe the other side would say that's an act of war against us. And if that happens, then what next? And to not think about that seems negligent, but since you're on the Foreign Affairs Committee, I know that you have thought it through. So tell me your views on what would happen next.
Tucker, we have been providing javelins and stingers and ammunition. We're providing a lot of military armament. So what is the difference between that and the MiGs and the S-300s? What's the difference? I mean, you have to understand that we are, unfortunately, the United States has fallen into the Vladimir Putin's trap. He is the one dictating what we're going to do, what we're not going to do. He said, we do not want, we are imposing a no-fly zone over Ukraine, and we're
letting Putin control our behavior. Okay, so that seems like a loss right there. Right, okay, but let me just ask you, because we believe we don't need to have more evidence that Putin has bad intent, that he's evil. A lot of people believe he's crazy, including some informed people, including many Russians. So we know he's volatile, and we know that he's heavily... How many nuclear weapons, by the way, does Russia have? Do you know?
Many.
I don't believe that at all. I think Putin knows exactly what he's doing, but...
One is enough.
So are we concerned at all that he might use a nuclear weapon against the United States. Is that a concern? Is that something that you consider as you recommend these?
This is not, like I said, I don't, this whole narrative that Putin is like a totally deranged, just crazy, volatile, and I don't believe that at all. I think he's a highly calculated genius. I mean, say what you will about him, but he definitely, I think he definitely knows what he's doing. But it is a fair talking point that Tucker brings up. If it is true, as we are told, that Putin is a totally insane individual, why are we doing things that will very clearly, hypothetically at least, provoke him into a war? Doesn't seem smart.
Policies.
Of course, of course that we're very concerned, and we're also concerned that he may be throwing a biological weapon against the Ukrainians within the next few hours because he cannot take Kiev as he thought he was going to. So of course that we are in confronting a dictator. But I think that we should put this into context, and I thank you very much for giving me the opportunity.
Of course.
If we believe in the free world, that this is just going to be the first or the last confrontation with a bad actor, we're in for a very big surprise. Because if we do not confront bad actors with strength, then we're going to have China and Russia and Iran and Fidel and Venezuela and Nicaragua here watching.
Hold on. But if needless to say, I've made that argument, for 30 years on television. The question is, are we doing it with all available risks known to the population in whose name we're doing it? So I'm asking you, what do you think the chances are, and I'm sure you've gamed this out as a member of the Foreign Affairs Committee, that Putin uses a nuclear weapon against the United States in response to this? What would you calculate the chances?
Sure that we are taking that into consideration.
But what do you think the likely? I mean, our viewers are, I'm sure, supporting you. I think most conservatives are on your side, but I think they should know what the informed view of the likelihood of a retaliatory nuclear strike from Vladimir Putin is. What would you assess it as being?
And I repeat, that's a hypothetical question, and I believe
hardly a hypothetical.
That he will not take that step if, starting today, the Biden administration will send the message that we are in charge, that NATO is ready to confront him, and so are we. And that is the problem that I believe, I'm not sure if you share in my view, that you obtain peace, you obtain this,
she doesn't even know what she's saying.
Power away from Putin if you show strength.
Okay, so do you believe that? Do you believe that's true? So
this is not a deterrent, though. There's an active war going on. You're suggesting sending these things to contribute to that war. Escalating a war is escalating a war for peace. That doesn't make sense. It doesn't make logical sense. When it's not, we're past the point of, we're going to deter Putin from doing this. It's literally the point where there's a war going on now. All you're doing by arming Ukrainians is escalating that war. Like, that's all there is to it. The utter
President
state.
Zelensky said yesterday that he is considering declaring that Ukraine would not join NATO in exchange for having Russian troops withdraw from his country. Would you describe, this is President Zelensky speaking, would you describe that
Zelensky can, who am I to say what's correct and what's incorrect?
Would you accept, well, I don't know, okay. Hold on, please don't dodge the question. Would that be an answer you'd be satisfied with? If Zelensky made good on what he just suggested, that we'll agree to neutrality, we'll relinquish claims to Crimea, and the Russians leave, would that be okay with you? Would you consider that an honorable exit, or would you consider it a display of weakness?
If Zelensky comes to the United States Congress and he says that this is the best path forward, we are no one to say something to the contrary. But I don't think he's going to.
If a foreign leader comes to the United States and tells us how to run our stuff, who are we to tell him no? Guys, we're also the party of America First. Don't you know, Republicans are the patriotic party. We're the America First party. We're pro-America. Democrats, the demon rats, are pro-China. We're pro-America. But with that being said, if a very left-wing thuggish, suspicious, not a very good foreign leader comes to our country and says, here's what we got to do. Who are we as Americans to say no? Who are we as Americans to say no to foreign leaders telling us how to run our country and our foreign policy and our government? I'm a proud, patriotic Cuban Republican from South Florida. Get out of here. Get out of here. What are you talking about? What a dumb argument. What an absolutely dumb talking point. Is Zelensky the president of the United States? Is Zelensky an American? No, Zelensky is a foreign leader. What authority does he have over American policy? Okay, or at least what should he have over American policy? His opinion is irrelevant. I literally don't care what that guy thinks. I don't. Why should we care what that guy thinks? He's a foreign leader. He obviously wants what's best for his country. He doesn't care about America so much as, at least to the extent to which it's not able to help Ukraine. Like, get out of here.
To say that. So we're creating scenarios here that are hypothetical.
Yeah, make Ukraine great again. Put Ukraine first. It's so true.
Following this closely, but he has said that multiple times. So of course that outcome would spare the deaths of him. Okay, but that would spare the deaths, and since I know you have great concern for the civilian population of Ukraine, that would spare the deaths of untold thousands and preserve the capital city from being destroyed. So would that be better than increasing the level of armed conflict?
Yes, it would. Objectively, yes, it would.
For the Ukrainians.
What do you mean? You're an American policymaker who's imposing your views on Ukraine, and I'm asking you simply, would that
so
be
true?
Why not
so true.
Well, of course you are. You're saying we need to send material, billions of dollars, arm the military, and I'm not criticizing your position. I'm just asking you, has it occurred that many lives might be saved if we were to encourage the peaceful solution that's already on the table? Are you doing anything in that direction?
If the Ukrainians want to go that route, they have the right to, and we're no one to say anything about it because they are the ones dying on the streets, and they're the ones under.
And they certainly are. They certainly are dying. That's right. I don't notice any members of Congress or David Frum laying down their lives. It's the Ukrainians. But have you?
So true.
Tucker, I think that we have talked about this point enough. I also wanted you to give me the opportunity to explain to you open borders because you said that I was in favor of open borders and I wanted.
Yes, you are. Yes, you are. Yes, you are.
For the amnesty for tens of millions of people who came into this country.
So true. Yes, you are.
I did because I read the legislation today.
No, I did not.
Actually, about 20 minutes ago, I read it.
No, I did not. I am strong Hispanic woman.
And I will invite you to read it again.
Yes, you did.
Just give me 30 seconds, and I promise I'll give it to you in sound bites. The Dignity Act, which I presented last month, is an immigration reform law, probably the first one that the GOP
sounds cringe.
Presented in a long time.
Right.
Yeah, we need immigration reform. We need a ban on immigration.
Security measures in the history of the United States Congress.
Right, got it. But,
I doubt it.
But it also provides amnesty for tens of millions of people.
Amnesty is what we have now, Tucker. Amnesty is when you have more than 13 million illegals, listen to me, without paying for schools, for roads, or for hospitals. I am giving them dignity. So
look at this talk around. Nobody believes you. It is amnesty. You can use all the politician rhetoric you want. Nobody believes you, dude. Of course it's amnesty.
Permission are not being punished. They are instead being
I can't watch
rewarded.
this anymore.
And so you
they're not. Let me answer to that.
Very different standard to Ukraine. I'm wondering if Russians fleeing Putin, do you believe should be allowed to start new and better lives in Ukraine? And I bet you'd say no because you believe in Ukrainian nationalism.
So true. So true. Let's go. Let's go.
Those people who have lived here for more than 5 years, that have not committed a crime, that have American children, and who are contributing to our economy. I want to give them something called dignity and then redemption. I'm not talking about Pat.
You literally sound like a Democrat because she is a Democrat. It's like that's just, and I mean that. Like that's literally just something Nancy Pelosi would say. Like it's not amnesty, it's dignity. Like it's just like it's terrible. You suck.
to citizenship. I'm not talking about
Okay, this is
amnesty. I'm talking
ridiculous.
about no, I'm not. And I don't want
Yeah,
you to
she is.
misrepresent what we did. And we worked for 1 whole year so we can solve. Just because this,
then let me ask you. Let me ask you.
You don't
and
agree.
our viewers can read the bill. Let me ask you a simple question. You're for sending MiGs
The fact that
to
you don't
Ukraine.
agree with me doesn't mean that you have to misrepresent what's on the bill.
Okay. Well, look, I think you've said it yourself that people who came here illegally, tens of millions of them, would be allowed to stay. They would not be punished. They would be rewarded. Now, you think that's enhancing their dignity? By the way, I'm not against those people. I just can't help notice the contrast between your desire to send MiGs to Ukraine to preserve its borders, but not here. Should we send the U.S. military to the Mexican border? Since we've admitted that tens of millions of people have come here illegally. Our borders are porous. They're not defended. They are open. Should we send the U.S. military to the Mexican border?
That is what I have created a whole plan so we can really seal the border. Because you know what? My community, the one that I represent, let me finish. Let me finish.
Let me finish.
Okay.
Let me finish. Give me 15 seconds.
I shall.
Thank you. I have created a
That's 3
series of
seconds.
measures so we can secure the border. Because we, the Browns, the Hispanics, the Latinos in this country are not in favor of open borders. The problem is that no one asks us. We want to live in the promised land and we want to contribute because you know very well.
Then close the borders and stop talking about amnesty.
13 million, we may not have food by Friday. Okay. Why? Because the food supply chain.
Please, and I'm sorry, I think everyone understands this, that we have other supply chain issues. And by the way, I'm not attacking anybody living in this country legally or illegally. I'm asking a question about borders. All of us are appalled by the violation of Ukraine's borders. You don't seem as appalled by the violation of our borders by tens of millions of people. So let me ask you.
So true.
Sure.
So true.
Military equipment. Okay, then would you support the U.S.
We the Browns
securing the United States border tonight, or on the same timetable as sending MiGs to Ukraine? How about that?
That's hypothetical again. Let's talk about
hypothetical.
You're a lawmaker.
No, it's not
hypothetical. What do you mean? Just say it. You're not for it, and you're for Ukraine, but not here.
Oh my gosh.
The whole segment, which is great, and I thank you very much. Let's go back to my bill.
She won't answer the question.
I am correct. All I am saying.
No, I'm going to give them dignity, but
you don't.
Not going to close the border, but we're closing the border.
A foreign country, but not our own. And I think it's pretty clear.
I am supporting for all the technology we could find so we can secure the border. We're all the military, the veterans, the police forces that we could hire so we can secure and seal the border, not only for people, but fentanyl and child sex traffickers. So I
really don't want to watch this anymore.
In leaving it, I do so with this prayer. May God's grace be with you in all the days ahead.
He is a globalist, and we are nationalists. He believes in some Pax Universalis. We believe in the old republic. He would put America's wealth and power at the service of some vague new world order. We will put America first. So today we call for a new patriotism, where Americans begin to put the needs of Americans first. For a new nationalism, where in every negotiation, be it arms control or trade, the American side seeks advantage and victory for the United States. And the people of this country need to recapture our capital city of Washington from lobbyists and registered agents of foreign powers who are hired to look out for everybody and everything except the national interest of the United States. And our Western heritage is going to be handed down to future generations and not dumped onto some landfill called multiculturalism.